This is Ken Ball with Custom Benefit Consultants, and welcome to this episode of Boss Moves and Benefits. I'm here with the founder of Custom Benefit Consultants, Robin Ball, and today we've got some really interesting guests with us from Arizona Benefit Plans, President Mike Hoffman and Senior Sales Associate Sydney Bogart. So, Robin, just to tee this up, I think one of the things that's been fun and interesting for me in this format is just bringing in different perspectives, right? So we've had clients come in, we've had some of our senior staff who have really defined roles. We've had longtime staffers at CBC, and it's interesting to get everyone's take or perspective on employee benefits, insurance plans, et cetera. So in this instance, I think we've got an entirely different viewpoint. Mike, in particular, is an industry veteran representing Arizona Benefit Plans over 40 years in the industry. So I can't wait to kind of get a different look at this, so to speak.
I agree. And normally, Mike, we use you for strategy, right? If we're looking for a particular product, if we're looking for a different strategy or something outside the box, you're the perfect person, to come to. So we really appreciate that. And I think this is going to be a good episode, not just for clients to think about, where they're going in small group, large group, stop loss, but also other consultants, to be honest. This is a different game. It's definitely boss moves with Arizona Benefits and CBC. So yeah, I'm excited.
So let's go there then. How do we, just to get that perspective, Mike, tell us about Arizona Benefit Plans and more so even your particular background.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for the invitation to sit with you guys today and talk a little bit about our company and kind of the role that companies like mine fill in this marketplace. So our role is, in the industry parlance, is a managing general agent or a general agent. And really the basis of that began way back in the 60s and 70s, where insurance companies didn't want to build out huge marketing footprints, meaning salespeople in different markets. And so they would come to independent general agents that had a lot of experience in the marketplace and say, will you take our product? Will you help us make our product better? And then will you take it to your distribution of insurance agents, brokers, and consultants? And so if you look at the history of Arizona Benefit Plans, founded in 1979, we had an insurance company come to us that said, basically, we're losing money in Arizona. You have the expertise. Will you pick up our product line, set up shop? And that began 45-year run, having the ability to be an important piece in an agency's strategy like CBC's, right? And always protecting your interests and your client's interests, really. But then also recognizing that insurance companies don't do this to lose money. So you have to be able to present and protect, in many ways, the insurance company. And that every case isn't a fit for every insurance company. And so what a general agent does is exactly that. It finds the right product with the right insurance company for the right situation with the right broker or consultants, right? And so sometimes we get branded Arizona Benefit Plans as kind of the general agent that's got a lot of creativity. But I'll tell you that creativity only comes from years of bumps and bruises and making mistakes, but we fix them, right? Yeah. And even more so having consultants and brokers like you guys that understand that the world is not perfect, right? If it were perfect, and computers could do what we do, right? But there are all kinds of different things that happen, and so you need to have these carriers that trust the Arizona Benefit Plans or the general agent, right? That can then represent your best interest and ultimately your customers, right? Because stuff happens.
So it sounds like in a lot of ways, I mean, if you said very, very succinctly, you've got, two different customers, right?
Clearly.
So you have customers that are consultants and agencies that are serving employer groups mainly. And ultimately employees and participants on the health plan. But then on the other side, you have the carriers who need the assistance. And so you've got to be able to find a way to create value for both of those channels.
That's right. And so, and then, often people say, so how do you get paid, right? Because there's a insurance agent or a broker or consultant that earns a fee the insurance companies pay us, and they pay us in what the terminology is. We get an override, but it's really a marketing expense that they don't have to spend because they haven't built out the infrastructure, right?
Mhm.
So they've come to us, and instead of having salespeople and that's a value to the insurance companies because, like Sydney, started in one division of our company, learned the ropes, and now is a 12-year veteran in our operation and just knows the drill, right? And I mean,
You
always
haven't learned anything, Sydney.
Most days I learn. Sorry, most days I know the drill.
Yeah. And so again, it kind of gets to this expectation that the insurance company has that we will build downline distribution, meaning agents and brokers that we trust, then they can trust. And so they can have some solace in the fact that there's not someone trying to jam a case in by withholding information
Right.
or that will just put the carrier at risk, right? And again, things happen, right? So, and I don't necessarily mean that there are situations where somebody knowingly tries to place a bad piece of business, but there are ways that consultants and brokers do their due diligence even with the customers way in advance, right? And so, again, we've been doing this for a while. We believe that our distribution system is top notch. We work a lot with that distribution in educating, and then educating about the product, but also about the process and about the market too,
Yeah.
right?
Let's talk about like real case with CBC
Yeah.
and Arizona Benefits and how we have collaborated to build product, right? We've built product for the Costco Marketplace, the CBC Health Insurance Marketplace for Costco members. That's really important. I want to hit on that. And then how our strategy with stop loss is very interesting. And I think what I enjoy about it is that you bring the carrier with some really smart people there. You're very smart. And then we all sit around and collaborate of like, how do we control risk? You
Right.
know, how do we manage this cost containment long term? And so we've learned a lot, I think, about the collaboration of just all the individuals involved, that you've brought to the table for us. So let's talk a little bit about the small group side, first of all, with the Costco product and how we build that.
Well, and there's a nuance in there that I want to tease out just a little bit. If you're a sales rep or a vice president of sales for an insurance company, right? You have one product set. And if someone picks up the phone and calls you with something really cool and really cutting edge, the likelihood of you being able to make a decision for a big insurance company to make that product additive is about zero, right? It's got to go through 10 layers and be vetted, and financially, we're in a different situation, right? Where we can go to one carrier, we can say, hey, we think that this makes sense. Here's the data. We don't necessarily need your approval, but we would like to start using this as an add-on vendor. And we've been very successful with a couple add-on vendors in that and bringing them to you guys. And then, so that's kind of one of these deals where a managing general agent is a little bit more accessible to some of the what I call the cool stuff in our business and bringing it to the table. Now back to kind of how do we work with you? And we do this with lots of brokers, consultants, and it's important to understand maybe how the company is structured. So unlike lots of general agents in the marketplace, we have 3 silos of or verticals, if you will, in how we approach the business. We have a small group side, we have a mid-market specialty side, and then we have a large group side where we place risk or stop loss insurance. And so when you would think about small group, we call that 2 to about 100 employee lives. We have a number of carrier partners, and I'll tell you a little bit about how we learn that business. And then in the middle section, that's where we are most creative. So we have a multi-entity government trust in Arizona. So that's a procurement compliant platform where public entities like school districts, towns and cities, counties, fire districts can come and, without having to go through public procurement, look at a stack of insurance companies and programs from a 2-life town or city to a 10,000 life, meaning employee lives, school district. They can come and they don't have to go out to bid to see our stack of almost 22 carriers that participate in that.
Why don't they have to go through procurement?
So in the 80s, the state legislature passed some legislation that allowed school districts and government entities to combine for the purchase of insurance.
Is that only Arizona?
It's been transportable to California in some specific trust situations, and many other states have that mechanism in the public space. And they didn't do it in the private space because that would be called a multiple employer welfare association, right? And there's been all kinds of situations where those situations have run out of money, right? And I like to think that public entities have the ability to manage their taxing authority so that they don't go out of business.
Right.
It's very seldom that you see a school district or a town or city, go out of business, which means there's plenty of money. Well, not always plenty, but there's money to pay
Fund
the
the
claims.
plan, yeah.
That's exactly right. So in that middle silo, we've got that. We also created some private sector purchasing pools by industry, and that's a pretty substantial book of our business. About 500 employers with a risk-bearing entity out of Utah that basically didn't create this MIWA, but created a mechanism to find the best industries and the best customers in those industries and aggregate them together for purchasing of administrative and risk and that type of thing. And we write those products down to 5 lives in Arizona. And then, so that's kind of that middle vertical, which is the specialty stuff. And then we've got the stop loss side. So, and we do a lot of work with CBC, as you know, with a couple partners in that space. And it's really the way that we've found to get creative, but also place risk. And so that's kind of how we're organized. So let's talk about how we originally came to you guys, right?
Yeah, with the allied product.
Yeah. So no kidding. The way the story plays out is I had a sales rep that had come from another small group insurance company, and he walked into my office one day and he said, I've been working on this for 2 years or a year and a half, and I have these folks in Nevada that have this relationship with Costco. And I said, well, explain it to me. And he explained it to me. And then I went on to your technology on the Costco website, played with it a little bit. And he said, well, do you think there's anything we could do? Because I can't get it done with these other guys. And I said, well, give me about, a day or so. And 45 minutes later, I walked down to his office and I said, look, I just reached out to some really smart guys in Kansas City, a company called Allied National. Then the CEO was Bill Ashley, who we had a pretty good block of business with. And I said, this is what we want to do. This is what we want to white label the program. We want to use your infrastructure, and we want to, over time, build this incredibly profitable pool of business so that we can then continue to affect costs down for Costco members. And it's organized. It basically says if a small group employer, so say 2 employee lives, and one of the owners, if you will, is a Costco member, they can go to the Costco services site, and they can not only buy their check cashing services and buy checks and buy a number of things, but they can go into the CBC Health Insurance portal, right? They can do a quote, and it populates not only with, as you guys know, you built it, but I'm trying to tell.
We might know some.
I'm trying to tell the audience here, but basically, get a quote. The product that we call Level Funded Advantage, powered behind the scenes by Allied National, then presents along with all of the fully insured opportunities in that marketplace. And so,
by the way, that's at www.costcoquote.com.
There you go. So it's been a great solution. Sydney, from an operations standpoint and a sales standpoint, works with your team.
You've been a great support. I mean, that's probably really good because normally our relationship with you guys is strategic, with Mike. But on their Costco side, you guys are great from the administrative and operational side for us. We really need that. Do you want to explain a little bit about your role there?
Yeah. We've had such a great time working with you guys. So luckily, we have 2 other women in our office that primarily work on quoting and day-to-day, any claims information or enrollment. And on a global scale, I kind of oversee the project as a whole. So anything that needs escalation, anything that's kind of unique, I kind of jump in. I just monitor everything that's going on and then come, to the table with you guys, usually if there's any additional strategy and different things that we need to work on, or
especially underwriting, right? That's where we need the help. So on level funded products, you have to go through medical underwriting. And so there are questionnaires, and they're looking at various things of how they're going to end up with the final rates, right? And so that's the piece that I think you guys help us the most with this.
And the process you built for it is the easiest process. I wish we could have that for more of our carriers, where they go to the website, they get the illustrative quote populated, and then are connected with one of your reps, get the rest of the information, fill out their apps online. Boom, we get all the information we need to send it out to the carrier for firm rates. The process that has been created for this program is just top notch.
Yeah, it's great. And I mean, honestly, we can save up to 55% off ACA plans, right? So that's the biggest thing for small group employers. Like if there's an opportunity, it's a little bit more work and you have to go through medical underwriting. And the other thing I've been amazed at is the renewals. I mean, the renewals have really been low. And so we had another product with Costco pre-ACA in Washington, and it kind of is building that way again, where there's such low renewals that over time compared to the market, that you're growing that value. I mean, you're so far discounted. If you get a 4 to 5% renewal, and the market, we all know 10 to 20% on these small group products, right? So even if you have that product for 3 years now, it's really difficult when you look at what the rates are in the market. And we're really proud of that. And small group employers, something that we want to power. I've always been a small group employer, myself. And so I think that's super important. And you guys know, even in Arizona, the small group rates on ACA are outrageous coming in for 2026. So,
So Mike and Robin, you guys both hit on something that's really important to us. And it's a notion that is consistently drilled in our heads with Costco, which is creating value, right? Yeah. So you talked about ultimately the downstream effect of the way that we were able to create the product, and that value trickles down to the member. Robin, you talked about it, and more specifically in terms of ultimately how we've created a product that over time will be more and more valuable as compared to the market. So it just gets my wheels turning, because from Robin and I's standpoint, one of our commitments has always been we work for our customer. We work for the employer. And certainly we have to manage relationships back to the markets. So my question back to you, Mike and Sydney, is sitting from our seat where our ultimate commitment is to our clients, the employer, describe how you are helping us create value for them.
So the central premise, and what I thought Costco did very well, was articulating their value proposition, right? And we did a lot of studying, right? The story about the hot dog and soda at $1.50 was important as we learned about Costco and their value proposition. So the first thing that we did when we started to build out the product, as you guys well know, is we dove deep into what could we do as a result of some of the things Costco could provide. And one of the biggest drivers was the fact that they had a prescription benefit management company that they operated. And we looked at the pricing, the underlying pricing. And what always struck me as just a huge value commitment was that the same discounts that they afforded their employee health plan, 300,000 plus employees, they were going to extend to a 3-employer level funded advantage customer. And so that immediately drove rates because at the end of the day, let's face it, this is an economic decision. If you can keep it competitive, the employer is in a better position to operate their business. So that, along with looking very carefully at a couple different ways to approach benefits. The first was a traditional PPO benefit. And we went to Cigna. We asked Cigna if we could use their list of doctors and hospitals. They agreed. But then we also looked at a program called reference-based pricing. So doesn't use a traditional list of doctors and hospitals. It does use a bit of a modified list of practitioners, so doctors and really doctors, right? Outpatient practitioners, but then uses a reference point based on a number of different indicators, mostly Medicare, but also prevailing fees in a marketplace and so on and so forth, to create a reference-based pricing point. And so instead of just arbitrarily using the negotiated fees via the network in that product set, we use this reference-based pricing point for the big claims. And that's allowed us to really get the pricing dialed in on that product. So what we say to employers is, look, we don't want you not to have the choice of having a traditional PPO for your employees. If that works for you, fine. And our pricing is good. In most cases, it is substantially below what would be the Affordable Care Act pricing. The second part is, if you want to help yourself, there is maybe an opportunity in this reference-based pricing thing. It's in 42 states now. It's not always competitive in every state and every geographic area, but we have zeroed in where there are a lot of Costco members and said, we want to make a commitment along with Costco. And so that's how we do it. And then Sydney drives the back room with our team and your team. And
so, I mean, I think I would translate that broadly as, it takes 40 years of experience to pull those disparate pieces together, right? Mm-hmm. So if our ultimate goal is creating value for the Costco member, the end user, the purchaser, which is the employer, and then it's leveraging the collective experience of experts like you guys to pull together these pieces and understand how, when pulled together to create a product, we've ultimately delivered upon our value proposition, which is creating a value-driven product for the members.
Yeah, and where that comes from is, if you would have looked at our operation in the 1980s and 90s, we ran what we would call a multiple employer trust back then. It was the way that an insurance company, again, that wasn't a huge Blue Cross Blue Shield or United Healthcare, to enter the market and write small group. And I learned that business, right? I was 2 or 3 years in the business, and I was sitting at the table with all of the heavyweights, the actuaries, the administrator, the insurance company. And, the funniest story, I'd say something and like five veterans would look at me like, man, that was the dumbest thing we have heard ever. And it was like, okay, well, you got to start someplace. And that's how I learned the small group business, by doing that.
Good way to start.
Yeah. So Robin, I kind of taking it back to the top of the conversation and just thinking about this through the lens of how do we gain different perspectives on our business, which can be so nuanced and there's so many different moving parts. And I just want to thank Mike and Sydney for coming in, because I think that this conversation helped shine a light on, all the variables that can come into play just to deliver an effective health plan for the employers that we serve.
I agree. And I think, the other thing I appreciate about you, Mike, is that you know us really well right now, too. And so I don't think that there's anybody better in the business you could tell me about cost containment for large employers long term. And I think that when you take us to the market there, stop loss or elsewise, even worksite products, that they know that we are honest partners and that we are going to bring quality to the table, and we are going to reduce costs at every spot that we can. And so when you tell that message, we tell that message all the time, but you're able to do that on our behalf to other markets that we don't have access to or we haven't met yet. So I appreciate that.
That's right. I appreciate the creativity, the ability to, carry that message to Costco, because we've done some great stuff in the large case market as well with you all. But it takes 3 partners in this proposition, right? It takes an insurance carrier that's going to take the risk. It takes a consultant that understands risk. And then it takes a customer that wants to listen to the story that you all tell and understand some of the science. Because if you can't get to understanding the science, now you're just moving the dollar pieces, and you will always continually be on that wheel, like the hamster wheel. And so I say this all the time, Sydney will attest, understand the science. And it seems kind of strange, but if you understand the science of the insurance business, you will be a better consumer, you'll be a better consultant, and the insurance companies will be more apt to support you with better pricing.
Absolutely.
So once again, I want to thank our guests, Mike Hoffman and Sydney Bogart from Arizona Benefits. And I want to thank you for joining us on Boss Moves and Benefits.